People provoke you to become the scapegoat. So the goal is to create an emotional stuck. And the scapegoating dynamic comes from the immediate family dynamic. That's where you actually get your practice. You don't get your practice. You don't go all the way through your 18 years of development to then get to 19 and you're in the workforce and someone's scapegoating you. You wouldn't be able to recognize it. No, you get practice when you are a child. It's your parent who scapegoats you. You become the person that is isolated. If you are, you can be one of multiple siblings, or you can be just one, a person, just one child. And the goal is to isolate you, to scapegoat you for every problem that parent is having, right? It could be a parent, a caregiver, it could be a teacher. The teacher calls you out and makes you look bad in front of everybody else. It's something in them that is jealous of you. It's something in them that they need to actually learn and change and grow, but they refuse. And so instead of actually trying to learn and change and grow, they would rather just scapegoat you. That's why we have racism. That's why we have systemic racism. Racism and systemic racism are the tools that people use to kind of scapegoat a certain group, typically the black race, right? And this can be in any country, on any continent. The goal is, there's some jealousy aspect of it there's some envy aspect of it there's some hostility, there's some ideal that they don't want to change. If you are using racism to navigate your life, there's something in you that you don't want to change. And it's, a lot of times it has something to do with emotional regulation. Racist and racism and all these different types of supremacy ideals, they usually come from a place of pride, but it also, in my mind, comes from the toddler syndrome. Like the toddler who falls out on the floor. And here it is, you trying to tell the toddler it's time to change, it's time for you to do better, it's time for this and that or whatever. And the toddler doesn't want to do it. It could be in the terrible twos, it can be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't know. They're no longer a toddler by a certain age. But they started somewhere to me at toddler. That's where they have autonomy, because they can't fall out of the bed as a baby. It's only when they learn how to walk and they kind of reason and they see what's going on, and that if they fall and you come and rescue them, they know that if they fall, you will come and rescue them. And that's why I say it's the toddler syndrome. It's something that I'm thinking about as I am recording this, because then think about the toddler. The toddler falls out on the floor and then cries and kicks his legs, and all the toddler is doing is waiting for you to come and get it. But babies do this as well. That's why the psychology term attachment falls under secure attachment and insecure attachment. That how you respond, how the parent or caregiver responds to the baby will determine what type of attachment that child has. And so if it's a secure attachment, the parent responds to the child in a reasonable time. The parent doesn't let the child just cry and not respond, like with food or milk or holding the child. But if it's an insecure attachment, the parent or caregiver would just let the child cry and respond to the child, to the baby on its own time. And so the child could be in the baby could be in the crib for a long time, just crying and crying and crying. And then after so much time, the parent or caregiver will go and hold the baby. So then both of those babies to me could turn into toddlers that have issues, that are toddlers that fall out on the floor. Both of them, even with both having one having a secure attachment and the other having an insecure attachment, they could still do that. But it depends then on the type of parenting style. So like I mentioned in all of my video lessons, you have authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved. And you can Google search, conduct a Google search, and type in parenting styles, and you get different types. But those are the four that tend to be the most popular. The authoritative is one type of parent who would design teachable moments. uh, that parent does grant autonomy. Uh, uh, the child has reasonable um, ways to handle life, right? They are taught reasonable ways to handle life. The authoritarian parent is what you see a lot of times in these authoritarian dictator type governments. Their attitude is do it because I said so. Do it because I said so. And so there are no teachable moments. There's less autonomy. The parent sows hostility and anger and bitterness in the child, and then it's reflected in how the child conducts himself or herself outside of the home environment. Then permissive is basically what it suggests. The parent just is permissive in how he or she is raising the child. So the child has a lot of autonomy, not a lot of direction. And then uninvolved is just what it means. They are not involved in the child's life. They are parents. The child knows that the parent knows that it has parents, but there's no real involvement with the child. This is what you might see with nannies and other people taking care of the kids. Okay. So then the goal is to create an emotional stuck. So if you look at this pic with the quicksand, this is what it reminds me of emotional stuck when you don't know how to get out of something emotionally. Someone keeps provoking you to be a scapegoat. So the scapegoated person, there's like three types of children, if I can remember. The golden child, um, the the scapegoated child. Then there's another that I can't remember right now, but there are three types of children, right? And so the scapegoat is the one who is always isolated, can't depend on. That's a person who is uh, reared as a insecure attachment. There's no one to depend on. They get to a point. I think it's avoidant attachment, part of the insecure attachment category, that they don't even call for help because they know they can't get help from anybody. So there's really no need to call for help, right? They'll stay in that emotional stuck until they self-assess and figure out what's really going on. Because the more they try to reach after a person to understand who they are, the same person who created them as a scapegoat, the more that person just continues to scapegoat them. They continue to, and scapegoating is essentially saying that you are a problem that cannot be fixed. And so I'm going to now project all of my problems on you because I don't really want to handle problems anymore. And since you are the problem child and the problem, then I'm going to project all of my problems on you, and you're going to bear all the problems for the whole family. So they'll isolate you, put you off to the side, not respond to you. And if they do respond to you, it's with a big sigh and a huff and a puff and hostility. And they act like they are doing you a favor. And then they'll push you back off to the side. They may call you names. They try to make fun of you within the family unit. They'll do everything that they can to to support and validate the belief you are a problem that cannot be resolved. It doesn't matter if God designed you as a solution. You may be the very fact that they're calling you a problem and treating you like a problem suggests that you're actually a solution to the problem. Meaning that the scapegoated child is usually the person who is going to break the generational curses, is going to be the generational change. The person who is saying it's time now to go a different direction. We've been going this direction where every one of our 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls got pregnant. Now, this new generation, we need to do that all. We need to do all we can to learn better from the situation. So, a scapegoat, a person or thing taking the blame for others. That's involuntary, right, in the beginning, and then it might actually become voluntary when it becomes voluntary is usually the person who becomes a people pleaser after that, who volunteers their time without even asking, right? Then quicksand, a bad or dangerous situation from which it is hard to escape. So if their goal is to create an emotional stuck, they're positioning you in such a way that you can escape, meaning that we don't want you to escape. It's like tying somebody to a tree. Please. And when you get upset, and when you get frustrated in life, when you get turned around in life, you decide to now go get that whip and whip that person who is tied to the tree. And you get your release. You feel better about yourself. You feel like you have been, you have done something constructive with your life, and now you can go back in the house and cook some food and eat some food and watch a movie. And then some time will pass, and you'll feel frustrated with life again. And remind you, the person is still tied to the tree. The person hasn't left the tree yet. The person is still tied to the tree. You feel all good about yourself, but then something happens at the job, or something happens with one of the other children, or something happens with you. You feel sick, or something like that. You don't feel like you can get out of your own emotional stuff. So instead of addressing your emotional stuff, you go back, you go get the whip, you you walk outside to the tree where the person is tied to the tree, and you whip. It could be one whip, it could be two whips, it could be three whips, however long it takes for you to get the release. Now, the person is emotionally stuck at that tree, not only emotionally, but now physically stuck. And that person is taking all the whips, taking all the hurt, taking all the pain of the family unit. But when you think about racism and racist and white supremacy, it's the same thing that happened with black people, Africans, right? They were tied to trees, or they were hung from trees. And so all that is, to me, it has its root in toddler behavior, not being able to get whatever you want. And instead of addressing your situation and addressing you and who you are as an individual, you decide to project all of your frustrations on that person, on that one African, on that one black person. Tie them to a tree and whip them. And once you get your release, once you get your release, you can go back in, put on a pot of stew, put on a pot of coffee, eat, right, and that person is still tied to the tree. So that's what's going on with the scapegoated person. That person right there is in that quicksand, emotional quicksand, physical quicksand, financial quicksand. The person who keeps calling you, asking you for money, they are creating they are creating you as a scapegoat. It's time for them to address their own money issues, but they don't want to. It's easier to project onto you their financial mismanagement and say you need to solve my problem, while they're also saying at the same time you are a problem that cannot be solved. If that isn't irony, I don't know what is. So so their goal then is just to create the emotional stuff that they are basically in. When someone is trying to scapegoat you, a lot of times it could be that they've been scapegoated because you do what you are, right? You do what has been done to you. You do what is um, very familiar to you. Someone scapegoated you, so now you're going to project scapegoating onto somebody else. But all you end up doing is being in a state of hamster's wheel. You're both running on the same exact hamster's wheel, and you might as well just be running together. You might Both of you as hamsters should get into the same cage on the same hamster's wheel and run together. That goes back to the agreement that I talked about in a previous slide. That when someone is blaming you for everything in their life, they're not taking responsibility for their own life. But then when you decide to take responsibility for their life and become a people pleaser, you're no different than they are. That means you are abandoning other areas of your life. So I want you to think about this, because the quicksand pick here is very appropriate. I actually wanted to do something else, but I think this is the most appropriate, because people who usually are in quicksand or emotional stuck don't really reach out for help. They would rather stay wherever they are. So that means it can be on both sides. That the person who is projecting problems onto you could be a person who is emotionally stuck. And then when you receive all of their problems, their projection of problems onto you, you become emotional stuck. So people provoke you to become the scapegoat. The goal is to create an emotional stuck. All right, so thank you very much for listening to this series. Visit, subscribe, and follow so you can find my website, reginayfavors.com. I'm on YouTube, of course, youtube.com/at Regina Y Favors. And then my Amazon author page is amazon.com/author/Regina Y Favors. So do take some time to think about some of the ideas that I went through in this particular Shake the Dust Off Your Feet series. I don't know if I'm going to have a book component. I'm not quite sure just yet, but it is something that I am considering. So I do hope that you will listen to the full series. I'm going to have it in full as one video length, and then I'm going to have it separate as well. So thank you very much for listening. Please visit, subscribe, and follow. Have a great day.